Advent of Code 2024, Day 7, Bridge Repair. For this one, I'm gonna basically I've got a list. I've got these equations. I've got test values and numbers, and I've got two operators: add and multiply. And the elephants. These are all equations, and the elephants stole all the operators. So the question is, with this test value, 190, for example, can I put either any of the operators, add or multiply, here to work with the other numbers to get 190? And so this one's pretty easy to see. Multiply works great. Here it actually works out as well. 81 times 40 plus 27 and 81 plus 40 times 27 are both end up at 3267. It's kind of odd. So this one's valid as well. One thing they say very clearly in this nice bold here is we always go left to right when doing it. Not so we're gonna, even if we 81 plus 40 then times 27, we don't take order of operation into account. We just work left to right. And so the question is, go through all of these equations, which ones have valid operations and which ones don't, and add up the test values for all the ones that do, and get, in this case, 3749. Let's grab this example input, and we will jump over here. I will use my GenDay script for day 7. I will include a link to the video of where I talk about exactly how that works, but we basically pull my input and create myself a little stub. We'll go ahead and put example.txt here as well. Maybe I could have GenDay create an empty file there. Save that there. And then input, take a look. So definitely we're looking at bigger numbers here. So like if this is going to be valid, we're going to need a lot of multiplication. But see, how many do we have? A lot. So 850 of these things. And some of them get kind of long. Like look at the number of numbers here. Every the first thought that comes to my mind is to do a recursive check. But we don't want to just blindly check all the way to the end. We want to make sure we're checking along the way, or else this will get unwieldy. Because each time I add another number here, that's like another two different possibilities to go down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. Like 2 to the 11th is a very large number. So I want to make sure I am putting checks in place before just recursively trying all these things. That'll make more sense as we develop. Let's go ahead and open up our stub here. I'm going to move this over to, actually, I'm going to move the example text open to the side. Move you way over here. Probably under my face right now. If I can split, let's see. Split down. Oh, that's kind of what I wanted. Move you here. Move you here. Now you got some examples, not under my face. All right. So what are we trying to do? We are going to, I'm going to make a function. So we'll do that call like def check possible. I don't know if this is right, but, and we're going to take a target, which is an int, and we're going to take nums, which is a list of int, and we are going to return a bool. We're going to, is this thing the right thing or not? So what are we going to check? Well, if the length of nums is 1, so if we get to our last number, then the only thing we need to check is nums equal to, let's talk about how we're going to think about this over here on the example. Because we always work from left to right, then I can kind of work backwards from right to left. And so the question is going to be, this is a bad, let's take one of the longer examples here. Okay, down here. If, let's say this, if this is going to be a multiply, and that means that some amount of stuff, which we're going to calculate later, times 13 equals 21037. So if we divide 21037 by 13, if that's an integer result, if it's not an integer result, we're done. We don't have to check that path because that's fine. But if it is an integer result, then we can divide it by 13 and then recall check possible with a new value and these 3 numbers. So and we can then check those. And if we get all the way to the end where we have 9 equals 9, then we know we're done. If we have 10 equals 9, we know we failed. So if the length is 1, we're going to return target equals nums 0. So basically, we're take the only number, the target, and if they match, it return true. If they don't match, we return false. Okay, so now we have more than 1. So we will call like num equals nums.pop. We're gonna get the last pop will take off the right side. I believe we should double check that just to be sure, because that'd be really annoying error to find later. X equals 1, 2, 3, x.pop. Yeah, so that returns, so it's going to return 3. So set num to the last, and it modifies x to drop that number. So that's where we drop that number off. Now we're going to say if we want to check and see, is the big number divided by the number we just popped off. So if target is divisible by, and the way there's probably a better way to check divisible by, but I always just divide like this, and I'll show you what that means. So if target is divisible by num, that means if target is divisible by num like that. And what this means basically is if I have 5 divided by 2, I get 2.5. If I have 5 double integer division by 2, I get 2. And so if I do 6 divided by 2 and 6 divided by 2, those two things will be equal. But if I do 5, they will not. And so it's just a way to check, like, am I getting a whole number out of the division? Okay, so if that's true, then we're going to say, we're going to check possible on the new target, which is target divided by num. I could do either. And the new list, which is just nums, which I've already popped off. And what am I trying to do here? I'm going to say, if that's true, then return true. So basically what happens is, if it's possible to do division, I'll go down that branch. And if that branch gets to the very end and returns whatever it returns here, if that comes back true, I'm good. If it doesn't come back true, I still got to check the other method. So that's going to be if target minus num. And what do I need to check here? I guess I need to make sure it's bigger than 0. Because otherwise, if I subtract off and I get below 0, then I'm basically done because I can't get bigger again. So it's greater than or equal to 0. If check possible target minus nums return true. Otherwise, if I get down to here, I'm out of options, so I'm just going to return false. A lot of things I could have gone wrong here, but we will see how it goes. All right, how are we going to get our stuff into here? Well, we're going to say part 1 equals 0, because we're going to have to keep a sum. And then we're going to say for line in lines, and let's see. We need to do some processing here. So target is equal to line.split on colon. And we're going to take the 0th one and we're going to make that an int. So that's, we're going to take it. Nums is equal to line.split. And actually, let's see, I'm going to do split on colon. And then I'm going to take the last one, or the second object, so this part. And then I'm going to split that on space. So I'm going to say that split on space, and let's see. I don't want to get stuck with this space, so I'm actually going to split on colon space here. And that'll get rid of that. Now I'm going to have a list of numbers as strings. So I'm going to say list map int. And what this is going to do, so map is going to take the integer function, apply it to each object in this list. So it's going to turn these all into ints. It returns a generator object. I want this just to be a list, so I'm going to turn that back into a list with the list function, and I get nums. Let's see. Let's do a print target comma nums and run this Python day 7 example. And it looks like, let's see, 190. Yeah, this looks perfect. Exactly what we want. Okay, get rid of you. And now we're going to say if check possible on target nums. We'll say part 1 plus equals target. We might be good. Let's give it a shot. 3749. That sounds very familiar. 3749. Boom. Let's do it with the, hopefully this works. That's a large number. It is not the right number. It's too low. Let's see. All right. I had to stare at that for a few minutes and figure out what's going on, but I think I figured out the problem. When I pass, so I'm doing this clever nums pop thing, which is fine, but it screws me up because what I'm doing here is then passing nums in. And nums, lists of things don't pass by, they pass by reference, not by value, which really just means when I pass, so I get this long list, I pass it into check possible, and I pop some stuff off of it. When I return, that nums object is the same, there's a single nums object that's being passed around all the time. So I've modified it here, and I'm messing it up here. So I need to pass a copy, and this simple way to do that in a list is just to recreate a new version of that same list, but just pass that in. If we run the example, we still get the exact same thing, but if we run the new one, you can see we got a bigger number. Let's go ahead and check, see if that is actually it. And that was it. All right, part 2. I'm gonna go read. All right, so in part 2, I get a new operator. I think we've set ourselves up really nicely for this, so this could go quickly, knock on wood. Basically, this new operator is the concatenation operator, and so 12, 345 becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so we just concatenate them together. And that's it. We can use that plus our things. This is where we definitely have to be doing our checks. Let's go back here real quick. We definitely have to be doing these checks in here, because if we're not, we are gonna, now we're doing 3 branches for every number, and it would just get insanely large. So it's good that we're doing these checks if they're possible. And really, I think we just need to add another one. All right, let's see. The cleanest thing, the safest thing to do would just be to create a new function here, copy this one and paste it. I'm gonna live a little dangerously and call this like part2 equals false. And then we pass in here, part2 equals part2. And here we say part2 equals part2. Now in theory, when I do Python day 7 input.text, my number shouldn't change. I believe that looks right, 7710. So we've not broken anything yet. Now we can say, we'll do if not part2, not part2. So when it comes in false, that turns to return false. Okay, so now we can do some more stuff. We're gonna basically just put a hard break there and say, okay, now if it is part2, so down here, what are we gonna do? We'll say part2 equals 0. I don't think it's smart to try to, I don't think I can try to do this in one. I'm gonna have to, I think I have to do if check possible target nums part2 plus equals target. I do think I have to worry about, I need to make copies of nums here, because if I don't, then I'll run it through this and it'll basically get exhausted, and that will be bad. I probably should not be modifying. I probably really should just change this. So not have to worry about that. I might come back and do that later. But so now, in theory, part2 should equal part1. Let's just make sure that works. It helps if I don't zero out the string. And it does. Okay, so we've got part2. We got this part of part2 seems to be working fine. Now, here's where we're down here. We're in part2. Let's see. We call this one. Let's see, target nums, and we'll call this part2 equals true. So what do we got? We need to do another check. So we'll say string. I'm gonna explicitly write this out because I think it's gonna get kind of confusing. String target. I will say target string equals string target. Not target. Num string equals string num. Now we can say if target string dot ends with num string, because if it doesn't end with it, we're done. Otherwise, we're going to say if check possible, the new target is going to be, we should figure that. Let's calculate this up here. New target is equal to target string, and we want to drop off the last x values. So let's pretend num string was 1, we'd want to do like -1. If num string was 2, we'd want to do up to -2. This is going to be len num string. That's our, and then we're going to turn that into an int. Oops, what I hit? Here, turn it into an int. And now we have a new target, so we can say, pass that in here, new target, and we'll just pass nums, and being very careful to just make a copy. If that is true, we will return true, otherwise return false. We could make this a little simpler and here and say if not part2, like right here. I'm gonna leave it for a second because I think it's worth checking. Let's do our Python day 7 example.txt. That looks pretty good. 11,387. That's our example. Let's try it with the input, and we crash. We will. So I've got my debugging set up. I'll link to the video where I set this up, but I can choose whether I want to debug with input or example. So I'll choose input here and hit F5, and let's get to the crash. And what do we got here? So we have target string is 7, and we have num string is 7, and we have nums 5. So we still have numbers left. So this is a failed case because we are going to remove 7 from the string. We're going to have an empty string for target, and we still have stuff we have to include. So we can't, I guess we need to check target string ends with that. And when target string is greater than len num string. Maybe that'll fix it for us. Stop you, back to terminal, back up here, and run it again. We got a number. We don't know if it's the right number, but we got a number. And it is not the right number. It's too low. Return to day 7. All right. There at this some more. Did I pass in new target correctly? Let's put a break here and just check that. We'll run to here again. Debug console. So what is new target is that, target is that, num should be 6 there, and that looks reasonable. Oh, I didn't pass part 2. Part 2 equals part 2. Although at this point we know it's true, but we'll just run there. That was almost certainly going to be my issue. Well, at least that was an issue. Let's grab that. That's much bigger. That's good. Oh, I've answered 2 reasons. We will wait 7 seconds. Probably been 7 seconds by now. 2 seconds left. And we got it. All right. That was a bit hectic, but not too bad. Yeah, thanks for hanging out with me today. I'll be back tomorrow.